Hi, this is Shawn Hessinger. I'm Executive Editor at Small Business Trends, and today we're going to have some fun with a presentation on content marketing for small businesses. Let's get started, shall we? First, a little bit more about me. My name is Shawn Hessinger. As I said, I'm Executive Editor at Small Business Trends. I've been here for about 8 years, and I look at my role as creating content that attracts traffic and can be monetized as a source of revenue. And this can work, you don't have to have a small business website for this to work. Maybe you run a food blog, maybe you run a travel website. Any content that you can create can be monetized as a source of revenue. And it's a business model that we use here at Small Business Trends. Some people who talk about content marketing may be using it for other purposes. Maybe they're driving traffic to an e-commerce site. Maybe they're driving people to landing pages, collecting leads. There's all sorts of ways to use content marketing, but in the context of our presentation today, we're just going to be talking about creating content for your website that can be monetized. So let's get started. Now, creating content to accomplish small business goals, that's my definition of content marketing. Others might have other definitions. And again, those goals could be, as we said, driving traffic to your e-commerce site, driving traffic to your landing page. But in our case, we're just going to be talking about creating content that will attract readers, hold their attention, and can be monetized as a source of revenue. And we'll be talking today about we'll look at three basic areas of this topic. We're going to be looking at how to do keyword research. The first thing we'll be looking at, and also more broadly how to create content and how to come up with ideas for content in the first place. We're going to be looking at how to answer readers' questions on your website, important part of creating content, and then finally, we'll go from tactics to sort of strategy, the overarching how to create a winning content strategy, because that's very important if you want to create and sustain a website using content. As a source of monetization and to draw your audience. So let's start with how to do keyword research. Now, I want to say up front that I'm not really an SEO type person. First and foremost, I'm really more of a content creator. And so I come to things from the standpoint of topics and ideas, not necessarily just, getting a really great keyword, high-value keyword and saying, let's create content around that. I really believe in looking first at topics and at topics that your readers are going to appreciate and going to gravitate towards first and foremost. But the keyword research will be an important part of the component. Just, stand by and kind of listen through the process if you're more SEO-oriented. I think this is kind of a holistic look at the content creation and ideation process. First, let's talk about brainstorming topic ideas. This is something our team does all the time here at Small Business Trends. You can do it with your team. You can do it by yourself if you happen to run a blog or website by yourself, or you can ask readers, or you can talk to friends. There's a lot of different sources for coming up with topic ideas. But let's talk about the basics. First of all, you want to create a list of topics your intended audience might find interesting. Now, hopefully you've created a blog already or a website. You know who your audience is, and you want to create content that is intended to interest that audience. So that's basically where you started. Again, you notice I didn't say start with some really great keywords. Keywords are important, and they're going to come into this process, but really you want to think about what kind of content, the type of topics that your readers are going to be interested in. They're not going to be interested in keywords alone. You can't just put keywords on a page and they'll come and say, oh, look at those great keywords. There has to be a topic. There has to be meat to what you're doing. And this is where we start. Now, another way of looking at content is to focus on holes in your existing content on your website. Are there questions that you've left unanswered? Are there related topics that are undiscussed? This assumes that you've been running your website for a while. Maybe you have a lot of content already, but there are certain areas that you haven't covered. For example, with small business trends, maybe we've covered a lot about social media marketing, not so much on small business taxes. Now, here at Small Business Trends, we have an immense amount of information on both topics. But for the sake of argument, let's say that there are holes that you can identify, and these are really obvious places that you can start with your content ideas. Let's go to the food website that we were talking about at the beginning of the conversation. Maybe you have a lot on food from many different cultures, but maybe you don't have anything on Middle Eastern cuisine, or maybe you're missing something on Asian cuisine. Well, these are topics that you might want to go after. They're areas that you might expand your coverage. And you might answer questions and provide information that you haven't answered yet. Another thing to do is to look for ways to build on existing content with more detail and more specifics. Maybe you don't have big holes in your content. Maybe, for example, again, using the small business trends example, maybe we have a lot on small business taxes, but not so much on local taxes, or maybe state taxes or sales tax. Again, here at Small Business Trends, we have a lot of content on all those topics, but this might be an example of where you might be able to go more specific, and this might be a great way to develop topic ideas. Going back to our food blog idea, maybe you do have something on Middle Eastern cuisine, but you don't really have anything on, say, Middle Eastern pastries or Middle Eastern desserts. Well, then this is an obvious way for you to expand into something that you haven't covered before. And it's a great way to approach content ideation. Now, the most important part in the brainstorming process, and I kind of alluded to this in the beginning and in the beginning of the presentation, don't let the tail wag the dog. Now, that's not a phrase I can take credit for, obviously. It's been around a long time, but it's a phrase we take very seriously here at Small Business Trends. At the end of the day, this is not about just grabbing a bunch of high-value topics or high-value keywords. It's about focusing on strong topics first and not just good keywords. So you really need to go through the process, figure out who your readers are, what they want, and provide that information in your website. And then, you're going to do some keyword research around that. And along those lines, let me go to the next slide. And this idea that we also hold very near and dear to our hearts here at Small Business Trends. We want to create content for humans, not for algorithms. Now consider this. You may find it tempting to create content that appeals to search engines alone, but remember, Google and Bing can only bring readers to your door. They can't make them come inside and stay for a visit. Content created only to capitalize on high-value keywords runs the risk of alienating your readers. If they come to your website and all they see is a collection of keyword phrases instead of real answers to their questions, they're going to quickly leave. And that kind of behavior is going to ruin your site's reputation with the search engines anyway. So, what have you done all this for? So let's move along to keyword research. You have your topics. You know what your readers might be interested in. How do you do this keyword research? Where does keyword research fit in if it's not about just finding really high-value content, keywords? Well, once you have your topics, you want to find keywords that around those topics. This is where keyword research really comes in. I mentioned one of the tools that you can use here, Uber Suggest, not one we really use here at Small Business Trends, but I wanted to mention it anyway. There are a number of tools you can use. And the idea here is once you've got your topics, okay, so once we have a topic, what are people searching for? What kind of keywords are there around that topic? Because that's going to be important in constructing our article. And a couple of the tools we use here at Small Business Trends, we use Keywords Everywhere. That's a tool, I think it costs you maybe $10 and you get like 100,000 keywords or something like that. You'll be at it forever. You'll literally never run out of keywords. It's a great value. It's not really as intense a tool as some other SEO, but it's a great way to kind of rough out ideas when you're in a brainstorming session. Say, okay, I think this is a really good topic. What are some keywords around this topic? You just take a look and eyeball it. Then SEMrush, that's something that we use to do kind of deeper keyword research. We say, hey, we think this is a good idea. Let's look at some primary and secondary keywords around this topic. Let's see what we need to include in our article when we write about this topic or articles. Okay. Now we're going to look at what you focus on when we're talking about high value keywords or keyword phrases. And a lot of people will talk about, really valuable keywords, huge keywords with big search volumes. Honestly, at Small Business Trends, we try to be a little more conservative in keywords we look at. We often look at primary keywords between 100 and 999 estimated search volume. Those primary keywords are the main keywords you're going to focus on when you're writing your article. We try to stay below 3,000 estimated search volume unless the keyword it has very low competition. The fact of the matter is some people might look for 200,000, 300,000 estimated search volume and say, hey, look, this is a great keyword. Well, yeah, it is, but everybody and his brother is probably working on articles along those keyword lines too, and it's a lot to compete with. If there's a lot of content on that subject on the web already, you're better off seeking more specific keywords for your topics that are maybe don't bring in the search volume, but they also don't have the competition, and so you have a better chance of sticking out, a better chance of attracting attention. Now, there's an exception to this, and that is hub pages. On Small Business Trends, we have a bunch of hub pages which direct traffic out to many different articles on related topics that we have on our website. Now, remember, we have tons and tons and tons and tons of content on our website. And so hub pages are big pages that link out to all our most valuable content around certain topics. In those cases, we can sometimes be looking for keywords with estimated search volume around 20,000. But that's very different, and we have a better chance of ranking, and you would have a better chance of ranking if you have hub pages that are around a certain topic and they're linking out to all kinds of additional articles and different additional resources. So there's kind of different ways of looking at it. Now let's move on. Once you've looked at the keywords, let's look at how to align your content with search intent. This is very important, and it's not necessarily something that's easy to do just with tools. Again, it's where content creators kind of have to look at their audience as well as just keywords and what keywords say. And let's look at some of the aspects of aligning your content with search intent. First, you have to look at your audience again. If you run a food blog, for example, do your readers cook? Or are they foodies who are more likely to be seeking out restaurants serving the cuisine you describe? Well, those two audiences are very different, and they're going to affect the way you create your content. They're also going to possibly impact the way you choose your keywords. Because, if you're going to present recipes, it's very different than if you're going to present restaurant reviews. And so that audience makes a difference, and it should make a difference in the keywords you choose and in the topics you choose to cover. Here at Small Business Trends, for example, we write about small businesses and for small business owners. If we're going to write an article on, say, the latest smartphone, we're much more likely to do it from the perspective of how a small business might use that device than from a consumer standpoint. So you can understand how you need to look at alignment and how things align, the content aligns with your intended audience. You also have to look at your audience's purpose. Hopefully you know what this is as well. What is your reader's purpose in visiting your website? Are they mainly reading your content for entertainment, or are they seeking information they need for work or hobby? At Small Business Trends, most of the stuff that we write, while we hope it's entertaining, is also things that small business owners are going to use, information that they may use either to further their research into their small business idea or running their small business, or advice that they're going to use and implement immediately to run their small business. So it makes a difference what the purpose of the reader is, and you need to know that too when you're creating your content. Okay, let's move on to experience. What kind of experience does your reader have? What is your reader's level of experience with your topic? A website created for professional accountants may present information very different than one for small business owners or others who do their own taxes and need advice. Well, we can certainly understand that, and that's going to, again, affect the search terms that you may use. Certainly a person who knows almost nothing about taxes, not a professional accountant, might use very different keywords than a professional accountant while searching for the same information. So these are things you need to think about when you're doing keyword research. And the last area here where you're looking at aligning your content with your with search intent is interest. What is your reader's level of interest in your topic? Are they looking for a brief overview after which they plan to do additional research, or are they looking for content that provides a step-by-step guide? You know, when you look at search, when you look at keyword phrases, and you look at things like guides and things like that, people really expect a lot of a guide. If they're coming and they expect your website to deliver all the information they need, it's very different than if you're just going to list a couple of tips or suggestions. And you need to reflect that in the keywords you research and the kind of article you write. So these are all things that you need to think about when it comes to search intent and thinking about what your readers are expecting when they get to your website. All right, let's look at establishing primary and secondary keywords. Now, here we have some ideas here that are actually plucked right from Small Business Trends content cluster list, and we'll talk a little bit about content clusters later, because it's an important concept also in content marketing. But you can see that you know, for an average category like printers, a primary keyword might be something like portable printer, best portable printer. These are things that are more specific. And then the secondary keyword might be things like portable wireless printer, portable Bluetooth printer, portable photo printer. More specific, probably lower keyword volume. But the thing is, we want to rank for all of these in this article. And, you know, obviously the primary is more important, but the secondary is also, these are also keywords we want to work in there. We see similar things with the category of incorporation. Maybe what is a C corporation? And then small business corporation, C corporation advantages. Can a C corp own an LLC? You know, questions and more details in the secondary keywords. And these are all things that in your keyword research you'll see, and then you'll think, well, is this primary or secondary keyword? What's the search volume? How specific is it in my topic? And there's also something in there about the office tech. You know, you look at, specifically we're talking about phones. Obviously, our primary search phrase is going to be best phone for business, and then more specific on the secondary keywords. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about researching competition in Google manually. You also have to research competition when you look at websites, when you're doing traffic. And we're going to look at some more specific ways to do that with some special tools. But you can really research the competition. This is something you have to do when you're creating that content, because remember, we talked about how much competition there is. Even if you've chosen a keyword that doesn't have a huge competition, you still need to know what else is out there that uses that keyword phrase. Who are you competing against? You can create a spreadsheet or use a premium tool for tracking. We're going to talk about some of those premium tools in a minute. You can search on your most important keywords. You can determine what type of content is ranking for each keyword phrase. For example, your keyword, what's coming up? Are there list articles coming up? Are there videos coming up? Are there, you know, what comes up when you do searches on Google? What kinds of articles? What's the format of those articles? Create superior content of the type Google is ranking for each search. Okay, so here's basically the idea. If you're going to do keyword research, you need to use Google and these other tools to see what else is out there, because you know, if you're going to deliver content that's going to beat that competition, you've got to figure out what that competition is. What format is it? What kind of content? And then do your best to create content that's similar, comparable, or at least content that you believe that audiences who also enjoy that content will enjoy. Now, let's look at some tools. And we mentioned here SpyFu. This is not really a tool that we use too much at Small Business Trends, but it is a competition research tool. And you simply type your URL in and you see your top organic competitors. There's a lot of ways to do research. We often use a tool called SERP SEO. And I want to show you a little bit about how this tool works. This is the Surfer SEO SERP Analyzer. And this is a tool that allows you to look at your competition. As you can see there, you can look at the rank of the website, the rank of the content itself, two different things. Maybe it's a good website, but the article not so highly ranked with Google. You can see all that. And then on those dots there, you have pull downs that let you look at, say, the content outline. You can look at the subheads, look at it in outline form. It's a big help when you start looking at how to create content that's similar to your competitors. And this is the Surfer SEO Content Editor. Here you can create that outline. This is one we did for Shopify recently. And you can look at how to assemble that content before it ever goes out to the writer, if you are having a freelance writer, or even before you start writing. I'm from a newspaper background, so I'm very familiar with just sitting down with a blank page and starting to type. But oftentimes it's helpful to know where you're going, and these outlines can help. Surfer provides a good opportunity, but you can use all the other tools as well to create an outline and get an idea of where you're going with your content, what information needs to be included. And this is all derived from looking at your competitors, looking at what they have, looking at what subheads they are using, and not copying, but giving a comparable, comparable content. And finally, Surfer's Content Score tool helps you get an idea as you write your content. How many keywords are you including? Are you including enough? Are you including enough of the primary keywords? Are you including enough subheads? Are you including enough paragraphs? Are you including enough word count? All this is very important because without it, again, you're competing against other people on Google. And the fact of the matter is that content that kind of is similar to your content, to your competitors, the theory goes, in terms of length and volume and the subjects it covers, the better chance you have of ranking well with your content. Now, we are at part 2, how to look for what people are asking on the web and answer them in your content. Now, you remember we talked about how to come up with topic ideas, and one of the things we talked about was brainstorming. Well, another way of looking for topics, and then for keywords also, is to look at what people are looking for. This is also another way to check your topic ideas against reality. Remember, we were talking before about brainstorming and what you thought your readers would like or be interested in. It can turn out that when you do a little research, you might find that you don't really know what your readers are interested in. They may be interested in things that you really didn't know they were interested in. So we're going to look at ways to look for questions that readers are really looking for the answer to and using that to create your content. One of the greatest ways to do this is to look at Google's People Also Ask. If you have a topic idea, look for keywords, do your keyword research, and then do a simple search on Google and see what comes up under questions. Each of these little arrows, for those of you who don't regularly look at the People Also Ask category, you can pull them down, and there are more questions and more questions and more questions. And then you don't just look at the questions themselves, you look at the answers. What has Google found in terms of competitive articles that answer these questions? Because they may present opportunities. Maybe Google hasn't had the best answer for a certain question. Or maybe you can look for questions for which Google has no answer. I can remember in particular when we were writing an article on franchises. And one of the Google People Also Asked said, we were talking about franchises, and particularly McDonald's franchises, and it asked, what kinds of incentives does McDonald's have for veteran franchisers? Well, when you did a search, what you found was a Google answer to that question that was a website that was talking about a veteran's discount if you ordered I don't remember if it was a Big Mac or a quarter pounder or something like that. In other words, Google couldn't find an answer for whether there was an incentive for a veteran to become a McDonald's franchisor. We went ahead and contacted the company, wrote the paragraph in our article answering that question to the best of our ability. And this is a great way of getting yourself in to search results, because Google's always looking for those best answers for those questions. Sometimes it can't find a good answer because nobody's created one. And this is a great way for you to rank. You can also use the Surfer SEO topics section. This is a way to look at other questions that Surfer is pulling, similar to Google's pulling from search and saying, hey, people are asking these questions. You know, they go out on the web, the Surfer platform looks for things on the web and says, hey, these are some of the questions that people are asking. You can also turn these into great FAQs, and we'll talk about that later with Schema, and that's a great way of attracting traffic as well. You can also look on other platforms for good questions. Quora is a good source of this. Probably many people listening to this webinar are familiar with Quora, might have spent some time on the site. There's a lot of questions, and if you look under your topic, whatever it is, might be small business, might be food, might be travel, whatever it might be that you're writing your article on, hey, look at Quora. You may find people asking questions, and perhaps they're good answers, perhaps not, but it might provide a good opportunity for you to figure out what kind of content you might want to put together. And obviously, you can look through your Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter feeds and groups for questions your audience asks that you can answer on your site. And finally, if you're a member of a group, for example, we have a Mastermind group right here on BizSugar, and we're going to provide some information somewhere here at the end of this presentation for how you go about joining that if you want to. You can find a lot of questions there as well. You know, if you're a member of a group, look for what people are asking. There are great topics, great things to write about, and things that you know readers who are in your area of interest, your topic that you're creating your website on, are interested in and are asking. And finally, you can use a survey to capture audience questions. If you have a readership, if you have an audience, go ahead and give them a survey. If you don't have much traffic yet, go on your social media if you have a good following, or somewhere else, and create a survey and ask questions. There's all kinds of tools now to help you with surveys, and it's a great way of finding out some key topics that you might want to look at covering in the future. Now let's look at the last topic here, last major topic in our presentation, which is how to create a winning content strategy. So far, everything we've talked about is tactical. It basically looks at how you create maybe an individual article, but how do you combine all these strategies, all these tactics into an overall strategy, a winning strategy for creating content for your website? Because really great websites aren't really created one post at a time. They're created with an overall strategy, and then posts are created to meet that strategy. So let's look at how to do that a little bit. First of all, we talked about clusters early on. I just mentioned it. Clusters are a great way, and creating content clusters is a great way to organize your website. You know what your topic is. We write about small business. You might write about food. We mentioned travel. You know, those are the topics that occur to me, but maybe fashion, whatever it might be. You write about those topics. It might be possible for you to create a cluster around that, around a certain topic. For example, we might create a topic around small business tax information. We might create a cluster around social media marketing. We might create a cluster around general marketing. You know, it doesn't really matter. There are many different topics that you can use and that you can create clusters around. But the benefit here is that you can create pillar content, you know, really important, really beefy, really massive content, and then supporting articles around that, and that will help you drive traffic. And it'll also make sure that people who are visiting your website don't just visit one page, but they also, you know, stay around, look at other pages, hopefully, click and click and click, which is what you want. You want them to stay, and you want them to come back. And if there's a lot of information in a cluster on a topic, they may just do that. They'll read a little bit what they're looking for now, and then they'll keep your website in mind and say, aha, I think that they also have probably other information on this. I'm going to go back and check. Now, in these clusters, you want to focus on Cornerstone Evergreen content first. This is content that doesn't change very rapidly. It might be a list posts, it might be how-tos, it might be a guide post. But they're really big posts that cover a topic in great detail and that won't change very often. Now, obviously, everything changes. You're going to have to update your content on a regular basis. You're going to have to update your web pages, especially the Evergreen. But maybe you want to look for stuff that's not going to change in the next 3 months. You know, maybe it's going to change in the next year. Maybe in the next 2 years, you'll have to freshen up that content. But it'll be around for a while. And that's what you want to look for in your Evergreen content. Remember, when you're looking at this content, you move from the more specific to the more, from the more general, for the more overreaching to the more specific topics. So let's look at the term content marketing. If you looked at a cluster that was on the subject of content marketing, you might start with that. And then you might look at things like, what is content marketing? Influencer marketing versus content marketing. Content marketing statistics you should know. This would be more specific. And then more specific yet would be newsjacking. It's a specific kind of content marketing. What is it and how to use it? 4 reasons your business needs a content marketing strategy. Aha, this looks a little more like, reasons that you might want to employ this, but it's more specific. 27 video marketing statistics. So here we're talking about a certain kind of marketing, a certain kind of content marketing, which is video, and so on and so forth. But you can see how if you build from that Evergreen, from that cluster, and then you build out and you get more specific, this is the way you build massive clusters of content that people will come back and keep looking at and keep clicking on. Now, what you want to do when you build this website is you want to interlink top content using primary keywords. I say primary keywords. You remember we talked about primary keywords in the beginning. Those are the most important keywords on your website. And when you link from your supporting content, maybe it's a news article, maybe it's a more specific article, back to that pillar post, well, you want to use the actual primary keywords in that link that you want your pillar post to rank for. And this is how you build your website traffic and your website authority, and you send traffic through your site, and you build on the content that you have. You keep creating content. You keep directing content from your newer topics or your more specific topics to your more overarching, your valuable content, that evergreen pillar content that we talked about, or cornerstone content. You use timely content to drive traffic to evergreen posts. Think about social media, right? You create a social media site. You have your link to your website there. You have some other information there. But then you also post on a regular basis the latest thing that's happened, maybe some kind of news in your industry, and you keep posting that stuff to your Facebook or other social media channel. Well, websites are the same way. You have that great cornerstone content, that really valuable content, but you also want to write those little articles that keep the search engines interested and keep your readers interested. And then you want to link from those timely articles to your more valuable content. Keep people engaged, but at the same time, keep them returning to your most valuable content, that content that's not going to change anytime soon and that is going to be the main interest for your readers. And finally, we talked before about FAQs. You bring the reader to your top content with Google using FAQ schema code. For those unfamiliar, you can do a little more research. I don't want to get really into this because this is a kind of high-level presentation. But this is ways that you can create in your content the kinds of answers to questions that you would see in a Google People Also Asked response. Google is looking for answers to their questions, and if you include the right HTML and the right schema code, you can capture Google's interest, and it's a great way to get started bringing traffic. Well, that about wraps us up. I want to thank everybody for showing up, and I think we're going to turn it over to Gail, who is going to pitch some questions, and I'm going to try and answer them. I want to thank everybody for being here for the presentation, and let Gail take it over from here. Thanks.
I am here. All right, so we have some questions from Martin. Is the search volume per day, month, or other time period, or total searches for the keyword? I think he's talking about one of the earlier slides at the very beginning.
Yes.
Monthly,
So
right?
So it is monthly, but it depends on the it's usually monthly, but it depends on the tool. So you'll want to check the tool. Yeah, I kind of, this is high level, so I didn't want to get really into that, and I don't want to confuse people, because it really, there's some tools that are very wonky with the way they're measuring this stuff, which is why sometimes you get different numbers, because it kind of depends on how, but generally that's the case. Yes.
Thanks.
All right. So the source matters, and keep in mind the numbers aren't all that accurate, because a lot of people will type in a search and hit search, and when they don't find what they want, instead of backing up, they'll just hit search again, and so they'll inflate the number of searches. The way I know that is sometimes there's a really wild search with 15 words in it and 25 times. I mean, only one person obviously typed that in.
Well, not only that, but I mentioned SEMrush and also Keywords Everywhere. Keywords Everywhere is not a terribly, I don't want to present the idea that it's a terribly accurate tool. I think in general, SEMrush is probably better for much more deep research. And the numbers are not always the same. You have to remember all these tools are drawing from different things. And the Surfer, the article, the thing I just mentioned, has the infuriating quality. I mean, for all of its quality, for all of its positive qualities, is the infuriating quality of having sometimes different search results and different ranking in its SERP analyzer than it does in its content creator. So you can go from the SERP analyzer and say, oh, these are really good competition. You go over to the editor and it's ranking things totally differently. It's how the data is being collected. But again, this kind of gives you an idea. And I would say that it's a good reason to use a couple of different tools. That's why we use a couple of different tools, because we want to get an idea of what's out there, and we know that what we're looking at is an imperfect picture, but it still is a picture. It's better than nothing.
All right, so Martin also asked if you had written a blog post on how to use Quora as a small business owner.
That is a great question, Martin. I believe that my editor-in-chief, Joshua Sophie, is probably on this call and probably be better able to answer that question. I'm going to say that I want to get back to you on that. We have written about Quora. Have we used it in exactly that way? Martin, if we haven't, you've identified a hole in our content that I think we need to fill.
Thanks.
All right, so I'm going to say I did a site search and did not turn anything up. And so I don't think so, but there's a topic for you. He also asked if you've written a post about Clubhouse, and I also looked on that one, and I didn't find a post yet on Clubhouse. And
yeah,
so
I think
there's two ideas for you.
Yeah, I think that the deal there, Martin, is sometimes we're slow on writing articles that, you know, Clubhouse initially, there was a sort of a limit of availability to platform. And sometimes we have been, I don't know if the word is guilty, but we have not sometimes written about things that don't have a really broad usage because we're worried about, you know, we try to, it's, you know, it's just one of these things we try to.
It's on Android now.
Yeah.
All right, so I marked those two answered. And I would say Clubhouse originally was invitation only and iPhone only, and so there was no reason to write about it yet, but it's a good thing to write about now.
I think Martin's doing our job for us, and if Josh is on this call, I hope he's taking notes.
Yeah, he's messaging me on Skype. He said yes. We don't have him yet, but
next pitch meeting,
right,
buddy.
So next pitch meeting. All right. So another question from Martin. What is your take on a content marketing mix that includes blog posts, newsletter issues, and podcast episodes?
We focus on written content, but I think I think that there's a lot of publications that do it all. We are looking at spreading into those areas because honestly, just in the short time we've been increasing the activity on our YouTube channel, we've seen tremendous benefits. Traffic begets traffic. So, especially if the stuff is all branded in the same way and it all seems like it's coming from the same place, I think it's, no, I don't have a preference for one or the other. I tend to be a word guy because I started in the newspaper business, but I don't really have a preference for or against that sort of thing.
Thanks, Shawn.
Right. You can expand your audience in infinite ways if you have the bandwidth to do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Eva has sent us some great questions. She said, what tools do you use to measure the success of your blog posts?
Well, I'll tell you. We pretty much use Google Analytics, to be honest. We have a lot of, we have a trick, Leland, our tech department, he's our tech department, has a lot of details rigged up and a lot of things rigged up for Google Analytics. As you know, Google Analytics is, I'll open Google Analytics and I'll look at how many visitors that got to the page. But there's a lot more information you can get from it. And we get very detailed reports just from Google Analytics. We also have Ezoic advertising on our website, and they provide analytics as well, and so we look at that as well. Are there better tools? There may be, but those are the ones we use. I guess we're kind of, I'm sorry to say, even though we're kind of vanilla that way. Sorry.
All right, so I want to throw in there that Google Analytics is plug and play, but if you don't customize it properly, you won't get the information you need out of it.
Exactly.
You have to find a Google Analytics expert to set your goals and do some other massaging to really get it to work right. So even that also said, what are some ways that your content strategy has changed over time?
Well, definitely greater focus on evergreen content. I think that when I started, we were much more focused on topical content, small business trends, right? So it's not that we were covering the news necessarily, but we were covering the latest. And I think that it's a certain time. I don't know if, we changed, but also the internet changed. And I think as social media became more and more prevalent, a lot of topical stuff moved more and more there. Now, we still do a lot of news articles, but I think that the focus on big comprehensive articles is the most significant change. And also really measuring how we measure our results, all the additional tools we use. Surfer is a relatively recent tool. We've used Yoast much longer, but we've kind of upgraded slowly over time our use of Yoast. SEMrush came into the mix at some point, as did Keywords Everywhere and all these other tools. And we're constantly experimenting with things. We're just constantly experimenting with measuring. So that's, I don't know if I'm answering the question, but that's, the content has changed because we've kind of followed sort of what the tools and what our audience is telling us about what they want to see.
All right, so one more from Ivana, which is a tough question. What are your thoughts on guest posting?
We do it less than we used to. And the reason is simple. If you're creating a website that is, let me back up a second. I think that if you're starting out, guest posting, if you really get out of your guest posters what you want out of them. In other words, you don't just let them write anything and just take whatever they give you and shove it on your website. I think that it can be a great way of building community. It can be a great way of attracting traffic because those people will share the content and they will promote the content. And so that's great. That's a great thing. That one thing is a great thing. As the website becomes bigger, the problem you run into is that your guest posters may not have the same agenda that you do. And they may increasingly, they're writing about topics that they think are interesting, but they don't necessarily have the breadth of knowledge of your site. And as you're building that content and you're trying to fill holes and you're trying to prevent repetition, it becomes more and more and more challenging to do that with guest posters. Now, having said that, I will say one other thing. The guest posters that are still with Small Business Trends are very receptive to the needs of the overall site. They are the guest posters who will say, what do you think of this idea? Do you need something like this? Not just give us an article. I hope that helps.
Right. There are some sites that actually put out a spreadsheet of topics they'd like to see covered that they send to their contributors in hopes one of them will volunteer. And so that could work. All right. So the next question, how to highlight your Cornerstone content within your clusters in the most efficient way?
Say that again?
I think Ann probably asked this. She wanted to know how to highlight your Cornerstone content within your clusters in the most efficient way. Like, how do you call attention to the Cornerstone content you're pushing your traffic through to from the supporting traffic, the supporting content?
Got it. Well, I look at it as a sort of a pyramid structure. Think of the most important content, not just Evergreen. We use both the term Evergreen and Cornerstone. Evergreen means that it will last a long time. Cornerstone means it's the content on this topic. And if you think about it like a pyramid, right? Your most important Cornerstone topic is at the top. Underneath, you have Evergreen content related to that. And then under that, more specific content. And then towards the bottom of the pyramid, making up the base, is your news content, your short-term content. And then think about drawing lines from the bottom of the pyramid through the content towards the top. Those are your links. So think about creating content where everything eventually is pointing towards those cornerstone posts, leading from the general and the topical to the specific and more permanent. Does that make sense?
Yes, and that was all good information. I'm not sure that's what she meant, but I don't know for sure what she meant. What I was thinking she meant was you've got your supporting content, and you want linking it to your Cornerstone content. How do you call attention to the Cornerstone content within that piece of content? Do you follow what I'm saying? Like, do you say, also read this, or put it in a box, or make it an image, or...
Oh, sure,
I'm not sure that's what she meant, but that's what I would ask.
Yeah. We generally have in the past linked within the text itself using the primary keywords and used largely SEO to do that work. So we haven't, I don't know that we've really promoted it on each page, like, read this important content. Now, there were times in the past, and somebody asked about how our content has changed. There was time in the past when there were rails at the bottom that showed our most important content and stuff. I think we do that less and less. And I think the reason is that we found that that this interlinking strategy is a far better way than you might think of getting attention to to that more important content. Because the thing is, you can promote things all over your website, and you can show, and read also this and everything else at the bottom. But at the end of the day, you have to look at the organic way that you're linking the content. It sounds counterintuitive because it doesn't sound like you're really promoting anything. But in fact, you are, because everything's pointing for the search engines and for your readers, everything's pointing towards that most important content, which is raising it in the search volume, which is raising it on the SERPs, which is raising it in Google, which is making it more visible on the internet. So I think we've tended to move towards being less interested in promoting it on the site than we are in making it more visible on Google, if that makes sense.
Okay, great. Yeah, actually, that was a great answer. All of it was a great answer. It was kind of more than one question.
No, I understand.
Right, so
I understand. It's a complicated question.
Matthew asked, is the seminar being recorded? And I can answer that. And yes, it will be recorded, and
we sure hope so.
Put into the blog post along with the presentation. And Martin said, thank you for all the answers, and a shout out to Shawn and Joshua and myself. And he also said, very interesting questions from Ivana. All right, and that pretty much wraps us up. Shawn, you want to flip to the next slide in your deck?
I will indeed.
And I put in there an invitation for everyone to join the BizSugar Mastermind community. Many people probably know that I am the community manager there, and we'd love to have you. There's no charge, and we have discussions. You can ask questions. You get free strategy from myself, and you get access to all the great guests and experts we've had over the time that we've had the Mastermind community. So we got a lot of good stuff in there.
It's
a great invite you to join.
If I can say, Gail, it's also a great opportunity to network with other business people, because it's a really big group and it's getting bigger all the time.
Right. So we have over 30,000 members, and we also have an advisors directory, so that if you provide services to small businesses and you would like to be listed, you can contact me. My email is community@bizsugar.com, and we can get your business featured in our directory, and that's where I send people to hire when they need someone to help their small business. And I think there's one more slide.
Yes, there is. Hang on. I just wanted to let you get through with the... Oh, well,
right,
that's
thank you. And
our little promotion.
Just a reminder to join us for the BizSugar Live webinars every second and fourth Wednesday at noon Central. All this information is on the BizSugar blog at blog.bizsugar.com.
You bet. Thanks a lot, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.